after a very long 18-hour travel day. Probably the most stressful time at the airport that I can't even begin to start telling right now. We're finally checked in to our hotel in Seoul. Let's do a room tour. This is the entrance area. The bathroom is in there. There's a full mirror behind the robes, then just a mini fridge and a welcome snack. Here we have, this looks like a double bed, and then there's an armchair there, which looks very dark because that lamp is not working. And there's a small table, and then across the bed, there's just TV and a desk, and I'll show you the view. Good morning. Today is day one of our first day in Seoul. Yesterday was a shit show. Quick rundown of what went down. Originally, our flight was from 11:30 into Seattle, which is only an hour away for us because we're from Vancouver. And then from Seattle, we had a around 2-hour layover. And then we had a direct flight from Seattle into Incheon or Seoul. And we're sitting at the lounge waiting for our flight to Seattle when we see that it's delayed by 40 minutes, which is not good because our layover is only 2 hours. We go to the woman at the gate for our Seattle flight. She basically helps. There's about 8 of us that are on the same trip, get on a Korea Air flight that goes direct from Vancouver to Seoul on the same day. But there were 3 of us, including the 2 of us, that had checked bags, which for some reason nobody else had checked bags. It was a little more difficult because they had to pull our bags from this original flight. The lady escorts us and we're running down, and we're also in this really far away terminal or gate for some reason, but we're running down the airport, us 3 and this woman who was so helpful. We had to go through customs and the arrivals to leave the airport, and then we were at the Air Canada baggage desk, and the guy was trying to help us pull the bags, but no one was answering his walkie-talkie, so he was like, it's okay, we're just gonna send the luggages. We're like, sure, whatever, it'll come the next day, but that's fine. And so we go back upstairs to where the departures is because we have to check in to Korea Air by 1:30. This is probably an hour before at this point, so 12:30. When we're trying to check in, the manager, she's like, oh, you guys can't if you don't have your check bags with you. But at this point, there was another Air Canada woman who was helping us. So she gets on her phone and she's calling, I guess, her colleagues at the baggage desk. And then they tell her that our bags have been pulled. So we go back downstairs, but we can't walk back into the arrivals area, so the 3 of us are just sitting outside waiting for time to tick. We don't know if we can even make this flight because at this point there was probably under 30 minutes before 1:30, and we don't even know if we'll get our bags and whatnot. But then after waiting for maybe 15 minutes, she comes back with a baggage cart with all 3 of our checked bags, and then we run back upstairs. We finally check in. Moral of the story is, don't book a connecting flight that has a layover that's less than 4 hours. We learned our lesson clearly because that was stressful, but it's okay because we made it. Today is a new day. My goal this trip is I want to try and use Korean as much as I can, so I'm putting myself accountable to that right now. Currently 8 p.m. and we're back just having some takeout. We're just tired from walking around all day. Probably still jet lagged a little, or we just didn't sleep enough last night. heading off to Miu by myself, holding too much stuff, so I dropped him off at a cafe.
And then this is typically 100.
Now, the night before we leave for our flight tomorrow morning to Osaka, quick update on this hotel. Again, we are staying at the L7 hotel in Hongdae. I'm really satisfied with the location and the hotel. I think it's clean, the design is pretty chic, the room is spacious enough, price is decent. Just being in the Hongdae area, if you're kind of bored, there's just a lot of shopping or restaurants in the area. So I would stay here again. Elevators were also not bad. I think the only thing is that the windows are not that soundproof, especially with motorcycles. They can be really loud here and you can hear pretty loudly. If you're interested in staying in Seoul, I would recommend Hongdae in general as a good region with goals. I did try to speak it whenever possible. Sometimes it is kind of awkward though if I say something and then they say something back that I don't really understand and it's just like, oh. But yeah. And on that note, I will see you in my next vlog, which will be in Japan. So very excited for that. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in my next one.